guys, Samantha from Dressing My Tutorials here, and welcome back to another episode of Junk to Jewellery. So, if you saw my recent experiment with me episode, you'll know that we made these earrings with some liquid clay. If you haven't checked out that video, please do have a look at it. It will be listed in the links below this video in the description. But we made this pair of earrings. But we were left with these scraps, and I asked if you wanted to see what I did with them, and a lot of you came back and said that you did. So what we are going to do is we're going to work with this now to turn it into something other than the earrings. You could of course cut out some more earrings if you wanted to, but I want to mess around and play around with this and have something a little different. So I'm going to put this aside. We might use that in a different scrap video because we don't need all of it. I'm just going to take this here, we don't need that either. Okay, and what you're going to need for this is some kind of bezel. I'm going to be using this little silver bezel here. Any bezel will work, it can be a clay bezel as well, but yeah. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a section of this clay, and I'm thinking I'm going to be working in this general vicinity. So let's make sure that we get all of that, and I'm just going to use the bezel to make a general mark in the clay to mark out where I should be cutting out things, and we're going to be making a mosaic with this. Okay, so now that we've got that outline to work with, I have chosen a few micro circle cutters. And I've got a little diagram off to the side here where I've roughly planned out what I want this to look like. But it is rough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this big one, and I want to have it in the centre. Okay, and that's just about right. Now before you make your cut, I just want to mention you should have this on a tile that you can put into the oven, because that's kind of important. Okay, so I've made a cut there. Then I'm going to grab the next one down, and I am going to cut around like so. Okay, then I'm going to go with the next one and I'm going to cut around as well, and I'm just going to do that until I fill up the general space that I've made it. Now this does not have to be perfect, we are going to worry about that later on. I have just used this oval as a general idea of how many pieces I'm going to need to cut out and where they are going to be located. So don't stress too much at this point. We are going to be baking these little pieces first before we worry about where their positioning is. So I'll go around and cut roughly, I'd say about 12 of those pieces. Then I'm going to take the smallest one, and then I'm just going to fill in the rest of the area. Okay, then when you've done that, you're going to take this and very carefully start pulling away the excess. And if a piece comes up, just gently remove that. And all these scraps, keep them. You can use them in another video or another project, or you could make more of these one that I'm going to be showing you today. But you basically just want to be removing all of that extra clay while keeping your little pieces intact. Okay, and there we are, that's all of our little pieces. Now you can see that a lot of them ended up being moved while I was trying to pick away all of the interconnecting veins, and that's perfectly fine. Once you've baked these, you're going to basically have moved them all around. The only reason I cut them out with the oval in mind is so that I knew how many I'd need to fit inside of the oval, so that way we don't end up baking more than we need. So then I pop these into the oven for roughly 15 to 20 minutes at Primo's recommended temperature, just so that they're nice and hard. They won't be properly baked through, but they'll be baked through enough that we can move on to the next step. Okay, then just slide them off your tile like so. Easy enough. Okay, then I'm going to pop those to the side, and you want to divide those by size because that's just going to make the laying process easier once we get our bezel ready for mosaic. So divide those by size. So bring over that bezel again, and I've just got a piece of black clay here, and I'll make sure that whatever background clay you're going to be using is nice and soft, because we're going to be pressing our pieces into it later on, and so the softer it is, just the easier it will be. So I'm just going to roughly imprint the shape of our bezel in there, and then just roughly trim it out. Again, does not have to be perfect, so don't stress too much about this point. So you can see that that definitely is not an oval shape. It's very wonky, but that's fine. You just want roughly the right amount of clay to pop in that bezel. Then just pop that in, swish it around, and there's a fair bit of excess here, so I'm just going to go in and get rid of it. Simple enough. Okay. Then smush that around, making sure that it reaches up to all of the edges and that it's not overflowing. Make sure you don't have any trapped air bubbles, that's also quite important. Nice and easy, and again, as I said, the softer the clay is, the easier this pot's going to be. Then I'd highly recommend grabbing a texture of some sort. I'm going to be using this texture sponge, and I'll use it to smush it some more, but also to get a texture in there, and we'll be reinforcing that texture later on, but for now you do want to just get that texture started. A piece of sandpaper will also work, it does not have to be a sponge. There we go, so now our bezel is ready to use. Okay, so the first step is going to be to find that centre point, and this time you want to be quite diligent about finding the correct centre point. Okay, and that's about right. So then you will gently squish that down, like so. Then you'll move up a size, and again, like before, you'll just lay it in. And honestly, at this point, a tweezer is going to be your best friend in placing these down into the correct places. So you'll just pop them down, don't squish them until you've got them all laid out correctly and you've got the spacing worked out well. And once you've laid them out and you're happy with how it looks, then you'll squish them down. And you're just going to repeat the exact same process with all of the little pieces. Okay, and there we go. That's how it should look once you have squished all the pieces down and you've got them all laid out into the correct places. So I did swap out a few of the pieces. I thought some of them were quite muddy, so I swapped out some of them. But yeah, now you want to pop this into the oven for a full hour at Primo's recommended temperature, and then when that's done we're going to give it a buff and we'll be finished. And here it is out of the oven. So it shouldn't have changed that much in how it looks. So now all we're going to do is we're going to take a buffing tool. You don't even have to do this, you can just leave it the way it is, but I want to give it a slight buff. And I'm just going to buff the surface. There we go. And that will have just brought up the shine a little bit, and it will have also brought in a little bit of the black. It shouldn't have brought it up too much, but yeah, it will just give it a little bit of a shine, so it's not completely necessary. You can of course cover this in varathane, you can cover it in resin, there's lots of things that you can do with this. I'm choosing to keep it nice and raw the way it is with that matte finish and the shine that the liquid clay is giving the mosaic pieces. But yeah, that's basically it for today's tutorial. If you enjoyed it, please do let me know in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.